Welcome to Sewing Sampler, Whip and Hem Stitches. These stitches are primarily used for sewing edges down, so to practice, start by folding your fabric as shown to create an edge to sew around. Put a few pins in to hold your fabric in place while you sew. Thread your needle. You may use either single thread, ideal for hems, or double thread for extra strength when you know the seam will need it, on a waistband for example. Here, I have chosen to use a single thread. Begin by running your needle up under the edge of your fabric to hide the knot. If I am sewing a hem, I generally start at one of the seams where I have extra layers of fabric to secure my ends. Next, take a small amount of the exterior fabric, similar to the way you did with the running stitch, and then bring your needle also through the edge of your hem. The whip stitch is one of the most commonly used hand stitches in the costume shop. If you have multiple layers of fabric, it's ideal to only go through one layer of fabric so that you don't have any stitches showing on the outside at all. Here are a few examples of how I do this on actual garments. The inside of an armhole. Notice how I'm sewing on the inside of the seam line so that my stitches don't show at all on the outside. This is a bound edge. When you're finished sewing and you need to create your knot, bring your needle through a small amount of the fabric. Gently pull your thread to create a small loop. Bring your needle and thread back through the loop a couple of times to create your knot. I usually tie 2 or 3 knots on top of each other just to be on the safe side. If you start running low on thread before you're finished, always stop and tie it off and start a new thread. You don't want to end up not having enough thread to make your knot. And this is a whip stitch. The hem stitch is very similar to the whip stitch, but you're careful to take only a couple of threads from the outside fabric. The inside looks essentially the same. This is useful on a garment that only has one layer of fabric to make your seam on the outside almost invisible. One of the most common mistakes that students make is to sew their stitches really close together. The stitches should actually be about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch apart. Too close together and your fabric will bunch up and look awful, as well as take forever to sew. Too far apart and the stitches will not be strong enough, and then your seam may fall out. Notice on the hem stitch, it's nice and smooth, and the stitches are almost invisible. And here you have the hem stitch and the whip stitch. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe.